This is the War of Beasts, a horrific planet-wide conflict entangling humans with 4 different alien races from all corners of the galaxy, vying for control over this wasteland of a planet called Vigilus. Territories are conquered, regions change hands, and populations are decimated as each of the 5 factions postures for control. The dense, dark cloud of death consumes. Okay, I can't do this anymore. Everything you just heard is actual, real, true game lore. But literally everything you just saw is a heinous board gaming lie. Let me paint the scene. Risk proposes to Warhammer at lunch, and shortly after happy hour, we get this. It's Risk Warhammer 40k, a game that on the surface looks unreal. Like, I love Risk and 40k. Somebody slap me. But deep under this lid, something sinister awaits. Something so ungodly ridiculous, it begs the question, how? How did this actually get to production? Players, game designers, or game hackers. In this video, you will see absolutely every horrifying deception, game blunder, and whoopsie baked into this game right here. How these mess-ups are unwittingly hidden, and after revealing it all, we answer the question, is this game still worth playing? I've done this take 1,000 times. I have an honest question here, and I know we're eager to get to the video. I'm showing you everything wrong with the game, and my intent is not to turn you off from playing the game. But does all of this info actually change the way you feel about playing this game? And if so, where on the timeline, what timestamp did you get to when your mind was changed about playing this game? But first, there's game testers, and then there's me, Pones Jones, a master board game hacker. My team and I play, hack, and unlock a game's true potential. And if you ask me, this game could have really used our services before hitting launch. Hold up, authenticity check here. There is an insane amount of info to cover here, so it's gonna feel a bit jumpy. Some of this info overlaps with segments from other vids that I've already filmed, so forgive me for any set changes. Oh, and I've got a few AI images sprinkled throughout so you get in the mood while I describe the lore of the game. But this script, it's all me. Firstly, how does this game differ from the classic? Oh, and we'll cover each of these in more detail later on in the video. And here we go. Resurrectable faction leader tokens sporting abilities to assist your troops in combat. Easier winning conditions. Complete 3 objective cards. Earn them legitimately or take out an enemy faction to steal theirs. Your choice. Reward card abilities. You're bestowed a permanent ability buff via a reward card after completing objectives. Fort walls. Special dual existing territories connecting regions together. Throne gelt. In-game currency tracked on territory cards allowing players to buy more troops. And everything else from how a turn plays out and combat. It's all the same as the classic. Usually, at this point, I'd say, let's jump into the setting of the game. But we've already hit our first blunder. This artwork is epic, but it's way too dark. And that's our counter. Green for good, red for bad. We'll be tallying all of them at the end of the video, but to kick things off, we're looking exactly where everyone looks after finding a new game. At the back of the box. Please let that be right set up. At a glance, you feel enveloped by the theme and artwork of Warhammer 40k. The layout feels cohesive. The 5 races, or factions, are on display. Blue Ultramarines, orange Chaos Space Marines, yellow Adari, green Orcs, purple Gene Stealers, each with their leader card and token, and each showing off their armies. A troop is 1 unit, vehicle is 3. The yellow Adari are the only ones that don't have an odd fuzzy black shadow around them. Same goes for the top of the purple leader token. Ooh. Why are they using Photoshop to place pieces on the board? Gameplay and Risk, there are no empty territories, but the back of this box has 16 of them. But what if that's just a picture of the board during game setup? Well, if you're following Risk's rules, then you've got to fill every territory with a troop before placing extras on your own lands. And it looks like there's already a battle underway, but that doesn't make any sense. Firstly, you have to leave 1 troop behind while attacking into a new territory, and there's no blue or yellow troops in any of these adjacent territories. Secondly, there are 5 rolled dice at the bottom corner of the box, but only 3 total units in the fight. There are 2 more objective cards than what comes in the game. 2 leader tokens are missing from gameplay. Oh, and I've got a big old pink printer blob on the back of this box. Okay, so what about the game board map? Well, if we pop the lid and lay out the board, one of the first things you notice are these fort walls. Here, I'll let me, from a previous video, explain. Well, on this Vigilus map, a fort wall is an armored, fortified travelway elevated from the wastelands connecting 2 hive-sprawl regions for trade and passage of people. But in Risk, well, it might just be one of the most ingenious things to ever grace a Risk map. These fort walls are a territory of their own, a separate land that exists in both regions simultaneously, meaning in
In order to hold this region, or this one, and also collect a region bonus, you'll have to control the fort wall between them. And there's only one fort wall, meaning only one of you is getting the bonus.
Brilliant! Absolutely brilliant. As said in the intro, the game board is supposed to be the planet Vigilus. Yes, I realize Risk has to take some liberties to make a playable game, but some of these mistakes feel like a complete betrayal. And when I compare the map, I think you're gonna lose your mind. Orc Scrap Cities is in the wrong location. Twin Chasms is labeled incorrectly, and so is its territory card. This city is not part of this region. This hurricane is way off course and should not be a territory. Yes, in the Warhammer lore, it's hiding a catastrophic black hole forming weapon, but the game never mentions this, and to top it all off, only certain armor types can make it through the flesh-eating swirl. So factions like Orcs or Gene Stealers are straight up hamburgers. But we're not done. These 4 cities are not part of these 2 regions. Lenscott Chain resides in a completely different region, rising from the wasteland as a chain of islands. Mextop City is not part of the ice region Kilax Bane, located at the south pole of the planet, and it's definitely not physically touching Dirkden, the smallest hive sprawl that incidentally has its fort wall wrongly connected to the Hyperia region. And now for the true travesty on this map, the Otech Hive Sprawl Abomination. Throne, help us all. 0 territories are labeled correctly. Aquaphobian Wastes is actually the desert located immediately north of Otech.
How did this go so badly? I'm willing to bet the graphics designer had a bad case of deadline desperation and didn't bother double checking the map's rotation on the board before handing it off to the intern to get its territories labeled. This is how it's supposed to look.
Which means that all of these territory cards are also labeled incorrectly. But we're not done.
Ironically enough, Fort Wall is partially rotated, and the Fort Wall's correct connection is here instead. But what about Dontoria, the largest region on Vigilus, and now almost the smallest on this map?
This is how the map is supposed to look, and if we compare side by side, you can see just how butchered it really is. Yes, the map is an utter Slanesh rave, but what about its playability? Surely all these inaccuracies are purposeful and supercharge the gameplay experience. Right? Well, let's have a closer look at all these dotted lines. Lines that connect territories to one another, and there's 16 of them. In my opinion, they are straight up too dimly printed on the map and get easily overlooked during gameplay. Oh, and 3 of them wrap around the back of the planet, which is impossible, because there's nothing back there but wasteland with no real way to traverse it. Now, the dotted lines can feel a bit chaotic, but they serve a very important purpose: to prevent players from camping in regions with numerous baked-in backdoor entry points. Entry points that help reveal what feels like a massive backstab mid-gameplay. I'm talking about the region bonuses. To hold a region and get the troop bonus, you have to keep your enemies out, so the focus is always on entry points. And if we look closely, all regions have the same number of entry points. As troops, you're rewarded for holding them. All except for 2, Storvhall and Mortwald. I could even forgive Storvhall because you don't have to worry about a fort wall. Let's talk about leaders. These cardboard tokens and cards, and not actual minis. This coming from a company that makes countless of them. But I will shelve my anger. A leader is not a troop. It only provides a combat buff to the troops in the same territory, and is removed from the board when the last troop in that territory is killed. You can then resurrect your leader at the start of your next turn. But rules don't cover combat with leaders, and the rule, a leader is not a troop, is found in a completely different game's rulebook, and is never once mentioned in here. Actually, this rulebook doesn't even tell you to place your leader on the board at the start of the game. Speaking of leaders and their buffs, these are all aneurysm inducing. And since they're all combat related, let's quick go over combat rules so everybody's on the same page. See, every faction in Risk is constructed the exact same way. Single troops and vehicles representing 3 troops. Troops can attack and defend by rolling dice. And just like in classic Risk, combat plays out with up to 5 troops total. Up to 3 from the attacker and 2 from the defender. 1 die each. Rolls are compared highest to lowest, with ties going to the defender, and leftover dice are simply ignored. All losing comparisons cost that player 1 troop. But what makes this game's combat stand out from classic Risk? Faction leaders. As you can see, combat is relatively simple and fairly basic. So what are the leaders' buffs, and how do they contribute to gameplay? First, War Boss, Orcs. Add +1 to all attack dice. Second, Marnius Calgar, Ultramarines. Add +1 to the highest attack and defense dice. Third, Magus, Gene Stealers. Add +1 to all defending dice. Fourth, Abaddon the Despoiler, Chaos Space Marines. Reroll all 1s. And finally, Autarch Hildari. The final army in this leader's territory must be defended defeated twice before it and the leader are removed. Hold up! Firstly, pretty sure all of these leader abilities have been lifted from other Risk games. And secondly, how compatible are these abilities with the game lore? Well, orcs, the green guys, are genetically engineered for combat. And Marnius Calgar, the leader of the blue human Ultramarines, is a well-rounded hero of man. So they got 2 right. And the other 3... But before we break down these leader abilities, we've got to get one thing straight here. Attacking in Risk gets you much further than simply defending your territories. Attacking lets you acquire territories, conquer regions, and get territory cards, all to gain more troops. Also, winning the game by attacking and defeating other players for their objective cards. And then there's the fun stuff, like sabotaging enemy region bonuses and territory counts. If you couple that with the insane green orcs warboss ability of +1 to all attack dice, you turn into an unstoppable freight train of terror. The blue Ultramarines leader gets a buff in attacking and defending. But it's Magus from the Gene Stealers that gets an almost godlike ability that is then completely ignored. Let's run the most extreme hypothetical scenario here. Both sides roll straight 6s, and after applying the buffs, it's straight 7s. But since the defender always wins a tie, there's no way to defeat God Mode Defender Magus. Except for, I don't have to. Because of those 16 dotted lines, why would I attack into a Magus trap when I can just go around guaranteeing that I'm at least gonna sabotage their plans? So if Magus is almost useless, then what about Autark, the yellow Eldari leader? Remember that if the last troop in the territory dies, then the leader dies with it. Well, Autark's ability just gives that last troop a mulligan, meaning this is a defensive-only buff. A weak, pitiful, almost vacancy of a defensive-only buff. And we just talked about how useless defending is. So to get the full use of his defense buff, Autark would have to chill in the middle of one-man army land, wishing upon a star that someone, anyone, will come and attack him. And if someone does attack him and kill him, you'll have to wait until the next turn to get him back on the board. It all just feels rather pathetic, doesn't it? But what about our last leader, Abaddon, from the Orange Chaos Space Marines? His combat buff is reroll all 1s. Well, on the surface, it doesn't look too bad. 1 is the absolute worst number you can roll in combat, and you get this buff while attacking or defending. But you have just as much luck to roll a 1 as you do a 6, although it may not feel that way. So would you rather take a +1 to your dice, or a reroll if you're lucky enough to land on a 1? But it gets even worse. Actually, 4 times worse. However, before you can understand what's going on here, I'll have to explain objective cards and reward cards. See, the game is won by completing 3 objective cards. Every objective you complete, minor or major, you get the respective reward card, an ability you retain for the rest of the game. So how does this affect Abaddon and his abilities? Well, it directly does, 4 times over. The doubled up major reward card, reroll your lowest attack die, and the doubled up minor reward card, reroll 1/1 per attack roll, are not only partially overlaps of each other, but also overlaps Abaddon's reroll all 1s ability. Meaning, while playing as Orange Chaos Space Marines, the number of reward cards has been chopped down by at least 1/4. There are minor and major objective cards. Oh wait, these are reward cards. I really love the artwork, but from a distance, they all look the same. Anyways, game setup has 4 minor and 4 major objective cards laid out for all to see, even before troops hit the board, meaning everyone can position themselves at the start of the game to snipe an objective card from jump, or sabotage others doing the same. It's downright brilliant. And depending on the number of players, you can actually win these 6 objectives before the game even starts. Now, after completing an objective card, you get to pick 1 card from the respective stack of reward cards. The problem? The rulebook never explicitly tells you that a reward card is now a player's ability. It's only implied. And the added rule on page 4 is a garbled, broken English language travesty, as it tries to explain that you can only use combat rewards once per roll, and then immediately embarrasses themselves by showing an example card that has nothing to do with combat. Also, like the faction leaders, there's reward card rules stuffed in the back of the rulebook under reminders and tips. These people are out of their emperor damn mind. See what I did there? Let's compare some of these major and minor reward cards here for a second. All major reward cards have a minor reward card counterpart. So, the minor reoccurring reward card, gain 1 extra unit at the start of your turn, is far superior to the major one-time use reward card of gain 3 extra units and then discard this card. And that leads us back to the objective cards. Specifically, the goof in this minor objective card control the Dontoria and Gork's Landing region. But the region, it's only called Dontoria. Here's another. Control the Hyperia, Dirkton Hive Sprawl, Hurricane Wreck, the Hoolian Swirl regions at the start of your turn. Duh. Fuck! is going on? The only real region listed on the card is Hyperia. The Dirkton Hive Sprawl is labeled just Dirkton. Hurricane Wreck and the Swirl are territories that already exist inside the region of Hyperia. So this card should actually read Control Hyperia and Dirkton at the start of your turn. Funny enough, the counterpart to this minor objective card is definitely easier to accomplish. Control Otech Hive Sprawl at the start of your turn. Speaking of which, for some reason in the rulebook, the reference chart calls it Earth Otech Hive Sprawl. But it doesn't really matter how messed up the major objective cards really are, because you only need 3 of them to win, and the rules never specify which type. So everybody goes for the easier minor objective cards, meaning 10 major objectives and 8 major reward cards are never used. It feels like a complete waste with these excess components. Excess components that I wish they had actually had in this next section. Oh, and watch for the embarrassing bold-faced lie. See, there are 2 ways to play this game. Complete 3 objectives to win, or complete 3 objectives and conquer the board. And it's the second one that I wish there was more excess. Each faction gets 45 plastic pieces. That includes all vehicles. So if you're trying to conquer the board, you will eventually be forced to leave a trail of 3-unit vehicles scattered behind you, attempting to claim all the single territories as you go. Meaning at the final battle for the last territory, you'll only have 12 units to attack with. But what about the lie? Well, the board sports 42 territories separated into 7 regions. But on page 3, we get fib 2 3 times. It says there are 40 territories separated into 6 regions, and then labels 2 incorrectly. Hyperia sector? What? But there's more. Listed in order from largest to Pones is just being annoying and petty at this point. They reused the example image from page 9 in page 10. Kinda lazy and can be confusing. But more importantly, there's an empty territory right there. Page 7, in the example image, Hyperia is controlled by the orcs, with empty territories all around. Okay, but they're trying to put emphasis on the conquered region by removing all outside distractions. And why do you see an orc troop in the top left of the image? Page 6, number 4. Second major objective card. The card title has a different shadow than the others. Number 5, references a section and misses 2 words in its title. Page 8, number 1, section D. They say objectives instead of rewards. Number 2, section F. They use the word your instead of you. And finally, page 10, missing an opening bracket at the end of section A. Gosh damn! I am missing a thing. But for the record, this rulebook has the feel of a cohesive instruction manual, yet is, in the end, a hot garbage mess. Alternatively, what is not a hot mess? These territory cards. First off, love the look. And the mini-map in the bottom corner? Do you remember in Classic Risk the card cash-in ladder, where every cash-in rung is an army larger than the previous? Meaning the leading player holds back on cashing in their cards for as long as possible, ensuring a population nuke goes off when they finally do it. Thankfully, all of this is gone now. Players can simply collect in-game currency, spending it on troops whenever they want. It honestly makes a huge difference. Comebacks are an actual common occurrence now, and gameplay stays around the 1 to 1.5 hour mark, and not 3 weeks like with the Classic. The only thing that I would change is that the game shouldn't use Throne Geld. That's the currency from the lore of Warhammer 40k. But instead, they should have used Warp Jump Exits, or something similar. Because in the lore, all of the troops landing on this planet, Vigilus, are using some form of warp travel to get there. Except for Gene Stealers, who are secretly infecting those landed troops. And I would say that at least half of the factions don't even care about the human-made currency Throne Geld at all. Oh, and just to clarify, the warp is a horrifying demonic emotion-fueled dimension providing an almost predictable, faster than light speed space travel, or even, on occasion, faster than time itself. And Vigilus is positioned immediately next to one of its openings. So, what about this tally, where we figure out exactly how many exceptional finds and complete mess-ups exist in Risk Warhammer 40k, and if this game is still even worth playing? And without any further ado, starting with the good stuff, how many exceptional finds are in Risk Warhammer 40k? Drumroll please. 8. Pretty good. And now, for the moment we've all been waiting for, the grand tally of all the horrific deceptions found in Risk Warhammer 40k. Drumroll again, please. 122. I don't think I've ever seen that ever. But on to the big question, is this game still worth playing? Yeah, there's some decent game mechanics here, especially if you like evolutions on Classic Risk. But if it's the Warhammer you're after... But we've missed something here. See, our tally totals are actually wrong. I made 2 other videos on this game, and each of those expose positives and negatives that we didn't discuss here. Like in this next video, how I unravel the unthinkable. A secret so shameful that if you roll this during the first action of the rulebook, you win the entire game.